Hi, I'm Laura, a HR and development consultant at Mint Manager. I am passionate about enhancing workplace cultures. I typically work with HR teams and leaders to improve the employee experience, develop management skills, and elevate HR practices for better results. So I'm here today to run through a quick workshop all about respect at work and avoiding bullying and harassment. It is fantastic for onboarding. So you're setting the right tone and expectations, and you're creating this positive workplace culture that doesn't become negative and toxic because you have a few people that don't quite understand how to interact and collaborate with one another. Let's get started. So, did you know that 1 in 4 employees say they've experienced some form of bullying or harassment at work in their careers? That signals that this issue is far more common than we might think, and it can quietly damage morale, productivity, and people's well-being. That's why we're here today. We're diving into this crucial topic, bullying and harassment in the workplace. So the mission is to cultivate a workplace where everyone feels safe, respected, and valued. What you'll take away is an understanding of what bullying and harassment really is. You're going to learn how to spot and tackle some of these behaviors with confidence, and you're going to discover how each of us can play a significant role in shaping a positive, inclusive culture that boosts well-being and performance. Because when people feel psychologically safe and respected, performance goes up, sickness goes down, and teams are able to thrive. So here's an example. Imagine receiving an email at 11 o'clock at night from Jeff. It's in all caps, okay? And then Jeff is also quite annoying because he sighs a lot in meetings when you're speaking. It could feel dismissive and undermining. And also, the email could feel super aggressive and intrusive. So, what's really happening? For some, this might feel minor, you can just brush it under the carpet and, easy to dismiss. But all of these small slights can add up to microaggressions. They're subtle actions that are kind of signaling that person, Jeff, is frustrated with you. He's disrespecting you. And it feels quite exclusionary. So this isn't a marginal issue. 1 in 4 employees experience conflict or abuse in the workplace. It can be very innocuous, it can be very subtle, or it can be very overt. That means in a group of 20 people, 5 are likely to have gone through this. The human impact is huge. Stress, disengagement, absenteeism, and in some cases, people leave their jobs. And it's not just personal, there's a business cost too. Conflict that isn't managed well costs UK organisations up to £2 billion each year. That is time lost in management, time lost in having to deal with grievances. It's lost time with potentially having to rehire people. And it's, lowered productivity. People could leave, and even it could turn into legal costs. So when we talk about conflict or abuse at work, these are the most common experiences people report. So 48% of people reported being undermined or humiliated. It can be subtle, someone talking over you in meetings, dismissing your ideas, or questioning your competence in front of others. Over time, this can chip away at your confidence and trust. 35% of people have experienced being shouted at or dragged into a heated argument. This can feel very personal, and it creates a real toxic atmosphere, not just for those directly involved, but also for anyone witnessing it. 34% of people face verbal abuse or insults. This is more overt, and it's damaging both emotionally and professionally. It's often brushed off as banter, but it isn't harmless. 20% report discrimination. That's 1 in 5 report experiencing this based on potentially race, gender, or disability. This is particularly serious, not just from a human perspective, but also legally. Do you notice how much of this is about behavior and language? So addressing these issues early prevents harm to both people. So what is bullying and harassment? It's unwanted behavior that feels offensive, intimidating, malicious, or insulting. It's often an abuse of power, subtle or obvious, that leaves someone feeling undermined, humiliated, or even emotionally harmed. It can happen face to face, over email, on Zoom, in group chats, even on socials on the weekend. It can be a pattern of behavior, or it could be one really damaging moment. And often the person doing it might not even realize how harmful they're being. Some examples: repeatedly putting someone down in meetings, spreading gossip or malicious rumors, always criticizing someone's work but never giving support, overloading someone with work on purpose, leaving someone out of team lunches or group chats, posting humiliating stuff about them online. So, not all difficult interactions are conflict or abuse. Some are just part of healthy workplace dynamics. So, here's a few examples of what isn't abuse. It's constructive feedback. Feedback is very much about growth and improvement. So your tone and your intent do matter. You've got to kind of think about how you're going to frame feedback before you deliver it so it can effectively land well, and make sure that it's fair and objective. So, if it includes suggestions and respect, it builds people up and not tears them down. So the second one is respectful disagreement. Disagreement is healthy. It's not about being aggressive or personal. It's simply another perspective that can improve decisions. It helps with innovations. It helps challenge the status quo. And it really is important to listen to different perspectives and put yourself in somebody else's shoes to try and see how their ideas could work or how your ideas could be better. Accountability. Holding someone to account is fair when it's consistent, positive in tone, and focused on responsibility, not power or dominance. One-off outbursts. Everyone has bad days, whether they're sleep deprived, or whether they have some personal issues. Their stress bucket could be full, and it could overspill. So a one-off incident followed by a genuine apology isn't the same as a pattern of abusive behavior. Avoidance. Sometimes people need space. So politely stepping back isn't exclusion unless it becomes targeted or malicious. The laws. Let's look at how the law views bullying and harassment. The two are related, but they are not treated the same legally. In the UK, there's actually no single law that directly bans bullying at work. Instead, it sits under implied contractual terms that employers must provide a safe working environment. Harassment is, however, covered by law under the Equality Act 2010. Harassment is bullying that is connected to a protected characteristic, such as age, disability, gender reassignment, race, religion or belief, sex, or sexual orientation. If someone is being targeted because of who they are and it creates an offensive, hostile, or degrading environment, that's harassment and it's illegal. Let's look at the real impacts of conflict, bullying, or harassment in the workplace. These just stay between two people. They actually ripple out widely. So harm to the individual. This can mean stress, anxiety, burnout, or even long-term health issues. The human impact is significant. Organizational risk. Employers have a duty to provide a safe and healthy workplace. Ignoring these issues exposes the organization to legal, financial, and reputational risk. Morale and motivation. Toxic behavior doesn't just affect those directly involved. Morale drops across the wider team and productivity can suffer. Disciplinary and grievances, the formal procedures, which are never nice, can be very stressful and time consuming for all. And people could even lose their jobs. Okay. It's time consuming, it's costly. No one wants to go down the formal route. Increased turnover. When people feel unsafe or unsupported, they leave. This then results in having to hire people, having to train them up with onboarding. You're losing valuable experience, and you're losing time having to retrain someone up in the position and potentially even paying out for recruitment fees. So it is really costly not to kind of lean into issues and get them resolved by mediating proactively on an informal basis. Reputation, if word gets around internally and externally, a reputation for poor culture or tolerance of bad behavior makes it harder to attract and retain talent. So here's an example that highlights the risks of unmanaged bullying at work. This is a proper tribunal case. Mrs. G, a secretary at Deutsche Bank, reported sustained bullying by her manager. This included being belittled, excessively monitored, and undermined in front of colleagues. Over time, she suffered psychiatric injury as a result. The High Court found that Deutsche Bank had breached its duty of care. The bullying was foreseeable and no steps were taken to stop it. As a consequence, Mrs. G was awarded over £800,000 in damages. Now that is huge. The key point from this case is that repeated unreasonable behaviour, even when it's isn't linked to a protected characteristic like sex, religion, or race, can lead to legal liability if it causes mental harm. Courts can award damages under negligence or personal injury law. Here's another case which show how these issues can play out in practice. This is about Mr. S, a Hindu manager at Royal Mail. He faced repeated bullying and discrimination at work. Colleagues made derogatory comments based on a mistaken assumption about his religion. Even more concerning, when he raised complaints, the employer failed to act. The case went to tribunal and the findings were clear. Royal Mail had harassed Mr. S. They had discriminated against him based on what they perceived his religion to be, and they had victimised him after he complained. As a result, Mr. S was awarded £229,161.86. That's a huge sum, but it's more than just money. The case damaged trust, morale, and reputation too. At the heart of a positive workplace culture is how we treat one another. These principles are about creating respect, inclusion, and strong working relationships. The key points are finding common ground. Even when we disagree, there are always shared goals. Trying to discover what they are really will help you work better together and more effectively. Also, finding common ground on a personal level, whether that's hobbies or families or travel, can help break down barriers, help you connect with that individual on a personal level. So finding common ground and being curious will help with your communication and collaboration, and it can reduce any sort of hostilities or frustration you might be experiencing. Understanding differences. So we all come from different backgrounds, and that shapes how we see the world. Awareness of this helps reduce assumptions and misunderstanding. How does that person want to work with you? How do they perceive things? So again, it's about being curious. Valuing everyone. Each person brings unique skills, experiences, and perspectives. Recognizing and appreciating that makes teams stronger. You've got to be fair in your appraisal of somebody else, and it's not just kind of having this negative spiral in your head that this is no good, that's no good. It's about trying to recognize people's strengths, skills, and experiences and how they have performed brilliantly in the past or what they are adding to the mix, rather than always focusing on potentially differences. So treating others with respect, the golden rule still applies. Treat others as you'd want to be treated, and that is fairly, kindly, and typically with dignity. Celebrating diversity. Differences aren't barriers, they are strengths. When we celebrate diversity, we build trust, creativity, and resilience. So these aren't just nice to have, they're the foundations of collaboration, innovation, and a healthy workplace culture. So choose to be civil. Here's a few examples of bullying behaviour and civil alternatives. Publicly criticizing ideas, flip that, and the alternative is offer feedback privately and constructively. So you can challenge the idea, not the person, and do it in a way that helps them improve and or avoids getting them embarrassed or getting defensive. Withholding key information. So the flip side, the alternative could be proactively sharing knowledge that helps others do their best work. This shifts the behavior from control and withholding to enabling and supporting, because you are sharing a common goal of the business's vision. Deliberate exclusion. So you can flip that and lean into the situation by inviting them in. It will create more belonging rather than excluding can create division. Rolling eyes or mocking somebody's contributions. The alternative civil response would be to actively listen with interest. And mocking shuts people down, listening shows respect, and it helps build trust. So we all have moments of frustration, but always have a choice. Choosing civility helps create a culture where people feel safe and they are able to do their best work. Tools for respectful and civil communication. So in tough conversations, it's really worthwhile to pause and realign how you want to approach a conversation, so you can consider what you value in that moment. Is it about being respectful? Is it about being fair? Or is it about problem solving? And that helps you ground your response. So what outcomes are you hoping for? Are you wanting to find a resolution, an understanding, or better way of collaborating? Tone. Consider your tone. So use a constructive and respectful tone to facilitate progress, avoiding aggression or defensiveness. By checking values, desired outcomes, and tone, we can enhance civility. Tool number 2, curiosity. This is the key to building empathy. So we can pause to listen and learn before making assumptions. A simple phrase like, "Can you help me understand your view?" opens the door to dialogue. It shows respect, reduces defensiveness, and helps uncover what's really going on. A few more tools. Tool 3 and 4. So 3, choose language that builds bridges. So words shape how messages land. So you can use I statements to own your perspective and not blame the other person. So I noticed instead of you always, or I felt instead of you made me feel. So always check what tone will move you forward. Number 4 is body language matters. Non-verbal cues speak louder than words. So positive body language can include an open posture, nodding, and eye contact. So avoid negative body language like eye rolling, sighs, turning away. So both body language and language, what you say, the words you use, can either escalate tension or build understanding via empathy. So it's about choosing the latter. We have another tool, number 5, the AIDS model. It's a simple framework which I love. I always use this one in performance management, personally at home, or on peer-to-peer communication if I'm not quite happy with something, or I want to give someone recognition and positive sort of reinforcing any behavior that I'd like people to repeat and do more of. So this is about giving feedback to peers in a way that is clear, respectful, and constructive. So A, action. Start with the facts. Describe the behavior you observe, not assumptions or labels. So A is for action. I is for impact. Share the effect it had on you, others, or the team. This makes the feedback meaningful. And do differently or do more of. Offer a way forward, what you like to see next time, the expectations. This keeps the focus on improvements, and it's kind of that forward feedback. This is what I expect. This is what I want you to drive towards. So, for instance, here's an example. Hey, when you rolled your eyes in that meeting, it made me feel dismissed. Next time, could we talk about it? So notice how this avoids blame and focuses on behavior, impacts, and solutions. It makes feedback easier to give and easier to hear. So just by scripting out a few conversations over time with practice, it will become more and more natural to be framing feedback in this way using the AID model: action, impact, do. Nice and simple, useful tool to pull out of your back pocket in everyday conversations. So let's have a look at an example of the same message can be delivered in different ways. So tact in diplomacy. Imagine saying to a colleague, this ad copy is way off brand. Did you even look at the brief? That is blunt, critical, and likely to put the other person on the defensive. So let's try something with a bit more tact and diplomacy. I think the tone of this copy might not align with the brief. Can we look at it together and refine it? So notice the difference. The second version raises the same concern, but it frames it as collaboration, not criticism. It opens the door to problem solving rather than shutting the conversation down. How to escalate issues. When dealing with conflict or difficult behavior, there are different routes you can take. There's informal and formal. The key is knowing when each one is appropriate. So normally you start with the informal route, and that is addressing any issue you may have with the person directly. So you might give some feedback using the AID model, or you might start a coaching conversation, start asking them questions, exploring their perspective of the situation. If it feels uncomfortable to have that conversation directly, involve another colleague, or you can escalate it to HR or your line manager. Formal routes. When something is significantly serious or the person feels unsafe to address it directly with the individual, you can raise a formal grievance. So HR senior leaders will be able to guide you through that process. It's really important to kind of have documented evidence, or to sort of take notes of who, what, where, when, and then have a clear record for any investigation that is needed. Okay, so both routes have their place, informal or formal. Ideally start with the informal route first. So the key takeaways we have run through: mutual respect, civility. It isn't about avoiding tough conversations. It's about how we have them. The tools that you've learned are AID feedback, choosing civil language, being curious, and that's giving you practical ways to manage conflict and build stronger working relationships. So remember, diplomacy doesn't mean avoiding the issue. It means addressing it with respect and clarity. And finally, if issues arise, you have options. Start with informal conversations if it feels safe and comfortable to do so. And don't hesitate to use a formal route if the behavior continues or it crosses the line. When we choose civility and respect, we create workplaces where people feel safe, valued, and able to do their best work. Civility is a choice, and it's one that pays off for the individuals, teams, and organizations. So thank you for taking the time to listen. I hope this session has raised your awareness and given you useful tools how to have better relationships at work. If you are looking for interactive training, please reach out. Thank you for your time, attention, and commitment to development.